Greetings, this is Mr. Nobody, the MAGA Republican, now another part 6 of the series on January 6th. You see here an artifact that is in fact very rare today, because after this particular issue of the New York Post was published, almost immediately copies from all across in the libraries across all the country were taken away. And before people realize it, they probably most of them do what they always do with newspapers. They put them in their recycle pile or throw them away, and they're gone. Or if they're pack rats, they lose them in their pile of stuff and we'll never find them. So being able to find this was not easy, and it was not cheap. But there's a lot here in this story. Revealed. Ukrainian exec thanks Hunter Biden for opportunity to meet Deep Dad. There's the headline. Biden's secret emails. Okay, there's a little section here that kind of introduces it. I'll just read this. Joe Biden says he never discussed his son's business dealings with Ukrainian gas company Burisma while he was vice president, but emails obtained by the Post show an executive thanking Hunter for the opportunity to meet your father. At the time, Burisma was sparring with a prosecutor, Viktor Shokin, whom Joe Biden later pressured the Ukrainian government to fire. It goes on in more detail, pages 4 through 7. So 4 and 5 are here. And let's take a look at some of this. Having the thing here, you can actually see what's inside. Smoking gun. Interesting pictures and text there. More text here. Please feel free to freeze frame this and read it for yourself. And some more pictures. Okay. We continued on to another page with some more articles. Okay. Voters have right to know what Joe knew. Okay. Hunter talking about my guy, the big guy. Alright. And there's more stuff. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff. I'm going to look at just a little bit, but there's one more thing I want to bring up here. A couple of reporters wrote the main article and one of the following articles by the names of Emma Jo Morris and Gabriel Van Rouge. In my opinion, these two reporters together jointly deserve a Pulitzer. If there's justice in this world, they'll get one, because this story was that important, and they broke it. That's some wonderful, serious reporting. Unfortunately, all of this, as we know, disappeared. The copies physically disappeared. New York Post had a website with this stuff on it, but within a couple of weeks, that just disappeared. If you had a link to it, you'd follow it, and just 404, not found. It just disappeared. Indeed, if you tried to send that link to anybody even before that time, either that or any other place on the internet where that article might have been rehosted or mirrored, you would find that your message does not arrive. Nobody gets the message at all. You could send it through Facebook or Twitter or Discord or any of the other social media you can think of, and the messages would just be filtered out. Either the link would be gone or the whole message would be gone, one or the other. And so you couldn't tell, hey everybody, this is important stuff, you all need to read this. Nobody gets the message. And as I said, within a couple of weeks, it's gone from there. So there are no links. No one can find this stuff. A few people might vaguely remember having read about this, but they can't point to it. It's like it just disappeared. The evidence disappeared. And evidence for a lot of things. I mean, they talk about where it came from, you know. The blockbuster correspondence, which flies in the face of Joe Biden's claim that he never spoken to my son about his overseas business dealings, is contained in a massive trove of data recovered from a laptop computer. The computer was dropped off at a repair shop in Biden's home state of Delaware in April 2019, according to the store's owner. Other material extracted from the computer includes a raunchy 12-minute video that appears to show Hunter, who has admitted struggling with addiction problems, smoking crack while engaged in a sex act with an unidentified woman, as well as numerous other sexually explicit images. The customer who brought in the water-damaged MacBook Pro for repair never paid for this service or retrieved it or a hard drive on which its contents were restored, according to the shop owner, who said he tried repeatedly to contact the client. The shop owner couldn't positively identify the customer as Hunter Biden, but said the laptop bore a sticker from the Beau Biden Foundation, named after Hunter's late brother and former Delaware Attorney General. So, these things were given to the FBI. And finally, after nothing, in December of 2019, and sometime later, it was probably around September now, 2020, it was given to Rudy Giuliani's lawyer, and who, of course, gave it to Giuliani, who gave it to Trump, a copy of all this data, emails, and a lot of other stuff. Some of it's kind of private and embarrassing, okay, but really only relevant to the life of Hunter Biden and the kind of people the Biden family consists of. I think that's kind of an indication there. But more importantly, was all of this business stuff. And so here's less than 8 months after Pozarski thanked Hunter Biden, as evidence in an email dated in 2015. His dad, the vice president, admittedly pressured the then Ukrainian president Petro Poroshenko and vice minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk into getting rid of Prosecutor General Viktor Shokin by threatening to withhold a $1 billion U.S. loan guarantee during a December 2015 trip to Kiev. I looked at them and said, "I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor is not fired, you're not getting the money," Biden famously bragged to the Council on Foreign Relations in 2018. Well, son of a bitch, you got fired. Shokin has said that at the time of his firing in March 2016, he had made specific plans to investigate Burisma that included interrogations and other crime investigation procedures into all members of the executive board, including Hunter Biden. In short, I don't want you discussing, investigating any of us and finding all our corruption. So that was made to disappear. And as we know, this story is after they asked the voters, large pools of voters, for a survey, if you had known about this stuff and what's on it, would you still have voted for Biden? And depending upon what group and so forth and how the question was asked, estimates range clearly from at least 4% and range up to 60% of voters who did vote for Biden would not have voted for him. Whatever else they may or may not have done, they would not have voted for Biden, knowing about these emails. So that was suppressed. And they didn't really have to refute it. They didn't have to disprove it. They didn't even have to pretend to refute it. Well, they did work up a pretense at some point. They had this thing where they went around to all these various intelligence people, probably most of them retired or semi-retired, and begged, pleaded, borrowed, bribed, blackmailed, or bribed them to sign a paper saying, "This looks to us like Russian propaganda." Not a one of them seriously believe that any more than any of us do. And now, of course, anybody who signed that piece of paper should be ashamed of that. And I think that one other thing to wonder about is how many other such intelligence people did they also approach, but couldn't be fooled, pressured, coerced, persuaded, maneuvered, tricked, bribed, cajoled, blackmailed, or whatever into signing something they all knew was bogus. So all this stuff comes out now, well after the fact. And it's a little too late to worry about that. Obviously, they're not really interested in seeing Biden get reelected. The point was not to reelect Biden per se. That was a minor goal, which is just useful towards a much bigger goal, which is to kick Trump out of the White House. So, but just as that piece of evidence had disappeared so thoroughly that at least in this case, I have the benefit of having found the artifact. So many of those others things observed that I noted in the last several episodes, they have similarly disappeared. They have never reappeared. They never got answered, investigated, refuted, even pseudo-refuted. They just got swept under the rug and made it just disappear. It's just gone. When Trump was first talking about all this election fraud, he had all this stuff he could refer to. But then quietly, silently, and very swiftly, all of it just disappeared. Suddenly leaving him saying, well, there's all this evidence, and everyone saying, what evidence? There isn't any. Yeah, well, they got rid of it all. They deleted it all. Those of us who watched events closely, we saw that evidence during the brief, many pieces of that evidence for the brief periods that one or another piece would be out there before somebody would find that and make it go away. We remember these things. We know these things happened. And maybe others besides that I didn't even list. In fact, there were others. So, what could they do? Well, January 6th was a big distraction. It really was. Yeah, something important was supposed to take place, but instead we had a different something that looks important going on. It's all misdirection. You got this great big thing going on. Hey, look, everybody. Hey, look at this. This is important. Look at this. You look at the news or any recounts of that. Nobody, recounting the story of all that. All you see is footage of people surrounding the Capitol, or else maybe occasionally some glimpses of things going on inside of people in there. Even Tucker Carlson found a few additional bits of footage inside. But none of that's really relevant to anything but this great big story to distract people from what's really important stuff really going on somewhere else, namely inside the chambers of Congress. There were very interesting, worthwhile, and important things going on that are what I'm leading up to. The most important part of this. And yet, even what I'm going to start with isn't even the most important part, but it is with some very genuine relevance here. It is of relevance because all those places, all those other places, you say the evidence could just disappear and go away. It didn't have to be answered, refuted, anything. It could just be swept under the rug and we all just pretend it didn't exist. Well, some of us don't. But each state for which there was an objection means 2 hours, 2 solid hours, for Congress to break out between the House on one side and the Senate on the other to go over and discuss these evidentiary details in extreme detail. 2 hours for each state, with each separate place going over so much data. And all of it goes into the congressional record and can be seen on C-SPAN and other places wherever they put that material up. And that cannot, and even if all that gets deleted, it's still in the congressional record. It cannot be made to just go away. And that is what they had to stop. That gets to the biggest priority, even bigger than getting rid of Trump, was to hide, get rid of, and remove all the numerous evidences of what happened to our election. So we have here in Congress a lot of these details. Some of them I've mentioned, some of them are not. In Arizona, they seem to have been particularly interested in focusing on the constitutional aspects, namely the fact that the article in the Constitution pertaining to this states quite clearly that it's up to the legislature of each state to decide the procedures for the election within that state. The legislatures, period. Not any judge or court or governor or lieutenant governor or secretary of state of the state or any other bureaucrat, faceless bureaucrat of the state has any right to do that. Only the state legislature. When does this election? When do the polls open? When do they close? What do we do for the people who can't make it but are legitimate, registered voters? All these various questions. How early do you need to register? What date when do you need to be registered? In order to vote in an election. All of these questions are up to the legislatures of a given state. And yet just willy-nilly, they will just change the rules. Like you're playing a football game and halfway through you discover your team is losing, but you're in cahoots with all the referees and you get them to agree to change the rules mid-game so that you can instead win. It is literally that bad. But let's hear some of these people talk about it, and this is what we can't refute.
During the campaign, Vice President Biden would do an event, you get 50 people at the event. President Trump at just one rally gets 50,000 people. President Trump increases vote with African Americans, increases vote with Hispanic Americans, won 19 of 20 bellwether counties, Ohio by 8, Iowa by 8, and Florida by 3. Got 11 million more votes than he did in 2016, and House Republicans won 27 of 27 toss-up races. But somehow, the guy who never left his house wins the election. 80 million Americans, 80 million of our fellow citizens, Republicans and Democrats, have doubts about this election. And 60 million people, 60 million Americans think it was stolen. But Democrats say, no problem, no worries, everything's fine. We asked for an investigation. We asked Chairman Nadler, Chairwoman Maloney for an investigation. They said no. Wouldn't want to investigate something that half the electorate has doubts about. It's just the presidency of the United States. Why? Why not one single investigation? Why not even one single hearing over the last 9 weeks in the United States House of Representatives? Why? Because all the Democrats care about is making sure President Trump isn't president. For 4.5 years, that's all they've cared about. July 31st, 2016, before he was elected the first time, Jim Comey's FBI takes out the insurance policy. Opens an investigation on the president based on nothing. May 17, 2017, Bob Mueller named special counsel. 2 years to investigate the Russia hoax. 19 lawyers, 40 agents, and $40 million of taxpayer money for nothing. December 18, 2019, Democrat House members vote to impeach President Trump based on an anonymous whistleblower with no first-hand knowledge who was biased against the president and who worked for Joe Biden. But none of that worked. As hard as they tried, none of that worked. They threw everything they had at him. So what did they do next? They changed the rules. They changed the election law, and they did it in an unconstitutional fashion. And that's what we're going to show over the next several hours of debate. The Constitution is clear, as Whip Scalise just said. State legislatures and only state legislatures set election law. In Arizona, the law says voter registration ends on October 5th. Democrats said, we don't care what the law says. They went to a court, got an Obama-appointed judge to extend it 18 days. No debate, as Steve talked about. No debate, no discussion, he just did it. Pennsylvania, same thing. Pennsylvania law says mail-in ballots have to be in by 8 p.m. election day. Democrat Supreme Court said, nope, we're going to extend it. Election day doesn't end on Tuesday now. They took it to Friday. Extended the election 3 days. Not the legislature, partisan Supreme Court. Pennsylvania law says mail-in ballots require signature verification. Democrat Secretary of State said, nope, I'm going to decide by myself that it doesn't. For 2.6 million ballots. Pennsylvania law says mail-in ballots can't be processed until election day. You can imagine which counties they were. Democrat-run counties said no and allowed ballots to be cured and fixed before election day. They did an in-run around Constitution in every state that Republicans will object to today. Every single one. It was a pattern. It was their template. They did it in Arizona. They did it in Georgia. They did it in Michigan. They did it in Pennsylvania. They did it in Nevada. They did it in Wisconsin. And yet some of our members, some members say, don't worry about it. We shouldn't do anything. Just let it go. It was just 6 states who violated the Constitution. What if it's 10 states next time? What if it's 15? What if in 2024, 2028, it's 26 states? What if it's half the states do an end run around the Constitution clearly spells out? We are the final check and balance. The authority rests with us. The United States Congress, the body closest to the American people, right where the founders wanted it. We should do our duty. We should object to and vote for this objection to the Arizona electors. Madam Chair, I yield.
So that was one, but that's not the only by any means. Okay, you have another one?
Madam Speaker, I rise as well to support the objection, and I rise with a simple question. Can the chair honestly tell Americans that with pending Supreme Court legislation or some pending Supreme Court case over legal observers not being allowed to observe and inspect signatures, that the laws and Constitution of that state were not violated to change voting outcomes? Madam Speaker, I will wait for a response.
Okay, that was another one. Okay, now I'm going to skip over a little bit. After the whole big break from the interruption, we have a little bit more from who is now the House Speaker, McCarthy.
This isn't the first side of the aisle that's ever debated this issue. I thought what Madam Speaker said back in 2005, this is democracy at its best. When they talked about a presidential election in Ohio. These are the moments when we should raise the issue about integrity and accountability and accuracy in our elections. But you know what we should do the next instance? Not just raise the issue, but work together to solve the problems. Now is the moment. Now is the moment to show America we can work best together. I will tell you, the size of the majority is slim, so it gives us the opportunity to make that happen. The only thing that can hold us back is the will of one another to do it. This side of the aisle always believes we're working with anybody who wants to move it forward. That does not mean that we're going to agree 100% of the time. It does not mean our voice cannot be heard. It does not mean we cannot be treated fair, but we should. That may mean on the size of committees. It means on our ability to offer an amendment. It means on our ability to have our voice. At the end of the day, it helps us come to a better conclusion. By returning here to complete the work we're sent to do, we are proving that our democracy cannot be disrupted by criminal behavior. We will not falter.
I have to comment on this. He was hoping they wouldn't falter. As we will see, and I will be getting into that in a future installment, they did falter very much. They did not continue with what they were setting out to do originally. But it was a high ideal, and he had hoped that having done all this stuff, things would continue, hopefully, more or less as they had been going so far, and would simply finish. They did at least resume their debate on Arizona. So,
We will not bend, and we will not shrink from our duty.
yeah, right. Nice goals, mister. Nice goals. Didn't happen that way.
Be very clear. Mobs don't rule America.
Yeah, they do now.
It was true when our cities were burning this summer, and it's true now. When Americans go to bed tonight, their lasting memory should not be a Congress overrun by rioters. It must be a resolute Congress conducting healthy debate.
If
We
only.
may not disagree on a lot in America, but tonight we must show the world that we will respectfully but thoroughly carry out the most basic duties of democracy. We will continue with the task that we have been sent here to do. We will follow the Constitution and the law and the process for hearing valid concerns about election integrity. We'll do it with respect. We will respect your opinion. We respect what you say, and we're willing to listen to you. I think the nation will be better for it on both sides of the aisle. Let's show the country the mob did not win. We have a job to do it. Let's do it with pride, and let's be better when the sun rises tomorrow. With that, I yield back to our speaker.
Well, that was the hope. That was the hope.
This is a preferred society.
That was the hope. As we'll see in the next part, that is not how things went. Thanks for listening.